Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of the ClimateCon podcast. My name is Travis Cook and it's great to have you here because it's all kicking off around the world. The ClimateCon war, the war against the climate cult is accelerating in every way that it can. In some ways it's good, in other ways it's bad. Overall though, it's a very pivotal time in our fight. These are the years, the months, the weeks, the days where we'll look back in the future and either be like, I did my part, secured the victory, and we're enjoying the abundance of our victory, or we're looking back and thinking, oh fuck, I wish I'd done more, look at what the enemy have now achieved, and we'd have to tell stories to our children and grandchildren of how we just unfortunately let the enemy destroy our hard-earned, well-deserved society that we all built, our ancestors built, men gave their lives to protect. Women gave everything to raise the children here over the generations, and suddenly we dropped the ball. The climate cult came knocking and we weren't there, and they just took over the place. That's one possibility. The other possibility is we're telling everybody how we put in the hard work. When the enemy came knocking at the gates, we were there defending the castle and we defeated their agenda. That's sort of where we're at right now, because there's very positive things happening in the USA, and I dare say the fight there is over, but it's for the first time since I've been in this fight, it's actually looking like it's winnable for sure. It's like there is a guaranteed victory here if we put in the effort. Prior to that, it was like, whoa, this is a big agenda. I know we've won things in the past, but can we actually win this? I'm not sure. But we're going to have to fight against it anyway, because the alternative of doing nothing is far worse. But now it's like, well, okay, it's looking good. Still got a lot of work to do, and here in the UK, obviously, it's looking significantly worse. The Labour government and Ed Miliband are clamping down on the people in every way that they can, because they know that we are waking up and we are becoming stronger and more powerful every single day. And if they don't stop this, if they don't do something to stop this momentum, then it's going to be game over for them. Isn't that something, though? Even with the decades of this agenda going on, the trillions and trillions of investment, and who knows how much brain power from the enemy in board meetings and phone calls and Zooms and whatever, however they organize themselves, all of this coming together, Davos meetings. And still, if they stopped now, it would be over. They have to keep pushing. That's an amazing thing. That is a testament to the power that we have. They know we have the power. It's only the people who don't know how powerful they are, because the enemy have programmed us to believe that we're not powerful throughout all of our lives. But if you just take one look at their behavior change document, it says we need the public to go along with this, otherwise it's not going to work. Currently they don't want to, so we're going to have to change how they think, feel and behave so that they will go along with our agenda. That's it, clear as day. They're saying we have the power, and if we don't give it away to them, then their agenda is screwed. So we're going to give an overview of what's been happening since the last show, because so much is happening. There's good and bad news everywhere. And then for part 2, which is for the members, I'm going to do a book reading of chapter 6, which is all about knowing your enemy, but it's going through the history of the ClimateCon and explains the agenda in a comprehensive way and builds significantly on what was chapter 7 and chapter 6 of the Beginner's Guide to the ClimateCon. Those two chapters got merged and expanded on massively. And just to put it in perspective, the first book was about 8,000 to 9,000 words, and this new book is about 3 times the size, just in terms of the text, because the first book, The Beginner's Guide, is just a beginner's guide. That book, although I didn't intend it to be, it's actually a child could pick that up. A child that's being hit with the climate change propaganda in school can pick up that book and read it and understand what's going on. It's that simple. But there's a lot more to this. It is quite complex, and now that everybody's learning more and we're all learning more, and my knowledge has increased and your knowledge has increased, and there's more graphs and data around since I wrote that in 2023, it felt right to build upon that and have a more comprehensive, in-detail guide that is for people that are beyond the beginner stage. You've learned the foundational stuff, you got a good grasp of it, and now you want to become even better, refine and hone your knowledge so that you will be a mini climate expert. And anytime any conversation comes up about the Climate Con, you will be right there ready with all of your information, able to just dominate the conversation in the right way, lead it to the right way, instead of some climate cultist coming in and spouting all of the climate madness and getting everybody into some state of desperation and fear over a non-existent climate crisis. You'll be able to counter that. So, the first thing that I want to cover that just came up is a flight tax. Labour's flight tax on airlines is set to add more than £50 to a family holiday within a decade, which doesn't sound like much on its own. Obviously it's annoying and this isn't necessary, so it's like, what is actually going on here? Well, we know what's going on here. They want to try and stop people from flying. They want to make flying a luxury for only the very, very rich, because they want to demoralize the people here. If you understand that our enemies know psychology to a very, very high level, they understand that, and they know how powerful they are. They know they can't just come charging in guns blazing, because if they make themselves too obvious of a target too quickly to too many people, we'll be able to take them down too easily. But if they just chip away, a war of attrition, an extra tax here, a carbon levy here, more restrictions over there, and it's like, over the time, they're looking to weaken the collective of this country and the West, so much so that they will just accept the slavery before them. And then suddenly we'll wake up and it's like, wow, how did we get here? How are we now having to justify our carbon credit score to the government just to be able to go and participate in society? And if we say the wrong things about the government, and suddenly it's all turned off. And that's a very unfortunate scenario where we could end up. And you only have to look at China, where it's already there. And even the European Union and so on are like, oh, well, this is working really well in China, so we should do this here. And it's like, no. But this is why this flight tax is very important, and all of the rest of it, because once you see, if you take a step back, get a bird's eye view and get a overview of everything that's happening, this is how our enemy works. It's a little bit here, a little bit there, over time, because we all know the analogy of the boiling frog, and if it's boiled too quickly, it will just jump out, but a slow burn, and it will sit there and get cooked. That's what they're hoping they're going to do to this country and the people here, is just introduce a little tax here, a little tax there, till suddenly you've got no money left, you're working harder for less, and everybody's living conditions have been lowered, all in the name of appeasing the insatiable net zero gods, carbon gods. So this is tied into the sustainable aviation fuel mandate, which means that airlines are being penalised if they don't go along with the green policy and so on. And if they can stop Brits going on holiday, they'll just be that little bit more grumpy, a little bit easier to control. Because they don't want a healthy, happy, vibrant, alive population who are enjoying themselves and feel good about themselves and their life and their future and their prospects, because that's far harder to control, and they won't accept a lower living condition. They want a high level of living, because that's what we actually deserve, because of the country we live in, the country we were born in, how much of our ancestors' blood, sweat and tears has gone into building this wonderful nation, and how much of our own blood, sweat and tears is building it right now and maintaining it. We deserve a very high level of abundance and living conditions. So this flight tax is a load of bullshit, and I wrote an article about it, and we had Braveheart here saying they will never take our holidays, because I know how much holidays are important to us. Holidays are important to the British. We live on an island. One of our escapes is getting off this island for a little while to enjoy some good weather and sunshine. That is part of being a British person, and we deserve to have that. So fuck this flight tax. And in that article, I'm just like calling on people. I'm like, let's go. Come on. Are you doing everything that you can? Are you at your maximum capacity of what you can do to fight back against this insane agenda? Because if you're not, you need to be. But you all need to be. It takes a collective effort. I know that regardless if we win or we lose, in 20 years' time, I'll be able to look back at this period and think, I fucking did what I could. And hopefully it'll be a tale of victory. If not, it'll be a tale of defeat. And let's hope it's not a tale of defeat. But either way, I'll have the peace of mind, peace of heart that I did what I could when I was called upon. Can you say the same? Now let's take it over to the USA for a moment, because this is an amazing report that came out, and I did again write an article about this called the USA is turning the tide on carbon, and everyone else is also starting to see this report, and it's really great. And if you haven't yet, you need to read my article. It gives a good summary, but also then read the report yourself, because as being on the Climate Con side, being on the Climate Con army, in the Climate Con army, to have the Energy Secretary of the USA commission this report is an incredible thing to be happening. It's the equivalent of Ed Miliband asking a bunch of awake scientists to produce a report about the benefits of CO2 and hydrocarbons to the economy, and also like some climate realism, and also just throw in a dash of destroying the climate crisis, the non-existent climate crisis, a bit of positivity and environmentalism, and also how it's all good for the economy. Imagine Ed Miliband getting a bunch of awake scientists and saying, please commission a report about that. That's what's just happened in the USA. That's why it's so huge, because we have a change of tune over there for the first time that any of us can remember. The government, at least part of it, are singing from a different hymn sheet, our hymn sheet, the truth, and it's great. So here's a quick summary, and this is from the report itself. This is the report summary, and it says, this report reviews scientific certainties and uncertainties in how anthropogenic emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases have affected or will affect the nation's climate, extreme weather events, and metrics of societal well-being. It assesses the near-term impacts of elevated concentrations of CO2, including enhanced plant growth and reduced ocean alkalinity. Evaluates data and projections regarding the long-term impacts of elevated CO2 concentrations, including estimates of future warming. Finds that claims of increased frequency or intensity of hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and droughts are not supported by the United States historical data. It asserts that CO2-induced warming appears to be less damaging economically than commonly believed, and that the aggressive mitigation policies could prove more detrimental than beneficial. And finally, it finds that the United States policy actions are expected to have undetectably small impacts on the global climate, and any effects will emerge only with long delays. Wow. When I saw that summary, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is my kind of report, and this is coming from the Energy Secretary of the United States. But this report was written by a group called the Climate Working Group, and its members are John Christie, Judith Curry, Stephen Koonin, Ross McKittrick, probably butchered that, and Roy Spencer. And they all have PhDs, if that means anything to you. So here's the Secretary's foreword of this report, and it's saying energy, integrity, and the power of human potential. Over my lifetime, I've had the privilege of working as an energy entrepreneur across a range of fields: nuclear, geothermal, natural gas, and more. And now I serve as the Secretary of Energy under President Donald Trump. But above all, I'm a physical scientist who sees modern energy as nothing short of miraculous. It powers every aspect of modern life, drives every industry, and has made America an energy powerhouse with the ability to fuel global progress. The rise of human flourishing over the past 2 centuries is a story worth celebrating, yet we are told relentlessly that the very energy systems that enabled this progress now pose an existential threat. Hydrocarbon-based fuels, the argument goes, must be rapidly abandoned or else we risk planetary ruin. That view demands scrutiny. That's why I commissioned this report, to encourage a more thoughtful and science-based conversation about climate and energy. With my technical background, I've reviewed reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the US government's assessments, and the academic literature. I've also engaged with many climate scientists, including the authors of this report. Wow! So good! This is my kind of energy secretary. Imagine Ed Miliband saying something like this. And so I'm just going to briefly go over this. If you want to read my summary, which breaks down because it's quite lengthy, just go to thegreatclimatecon.com and go to the articles, the latest news, and read the USA Turns the Tide on Carbon article. But basically it's saying that CO2 is good, and it destroys the narrative that carbon dioxide is a pollutant, because it isn't. And it's saying that CO2 is a contributor to global greening, and has a nice graph here. We're saying the growing CO2 concentration in the atmosphere has the important positive effect of promoting plant growth by enhancing photosynthesis and improving water use efficiency. That is evident in the global greening phenomenon discussed below, as well as in improving agricultural yields discussed in Chapter 10. Here we just focus on CO2 fertilization, and the research on combined effects due to temperature and precipitation changes are discussed in Chapter 10. And it looks good. Who doesn't want this place a bit greener, right? And there's an awesome picture. It's cool because there's 101 different ways that we can show how CO2 is good for the environment, good for plants. And this one is, it's got a plant and it's showing the different levels of CO2 parts per million and how it affects the plant's growth. At 150 parts, 270, 350 and 700, and we see all along the way, with every increase of CO2, the plant is growing better and stronger and healthier. Very cool to see. And just to wrap this part up, it's saying, this is from the report as well, current CO2 levels are about 430 parts per million, up from 280 parts per million in the early 1800s. The positive response of plants to extra CO2 is illustrated in the figure above, and it shows the growth effect of CO2 on the seedlings over 14 days. And over the past 60 years, there have been thousands of studies on response of plants rising to CO2 levels. The overwhelming theme is that plants, especially C3 plants, benefit from extra CO2. There are two mechanisms by which CO2 confers a growth benefit. Enhanced photosynthesis via the metabolic pathways, and increased water use efficiency, and this arises because plants draw in CO2 by opening the stomata pores on the leaf surface. When CO2 is scarce, the stomata must be kept wide open for long periods, allowing water to evaporate. Under enriched CO2 conditions, the stomata may remain closed for longer periods, thus helping the plant retain water longer, and so increasing water use efficiency. More CO2, please. CO2 good. Important for everybody to understand that. And a report after my own heart, because it confirms that temperature data is unreliable, which we also covered again recently on the website, and how Stevenson screens that are basically beehives on stilts, they do not look like some insane modern technological miracle that would just unquestionably produce the most accurate measurements of temperature ever. It literally looks like someone's just put a beehive on some stilts, and this is what we're relying on to measure our temperature data. Never mind if they're placed on urban heat islands, near loads and loads of other buildings, which increases the ambient temperature. Who knows? Let's just put it next to a runway of an airplane of an airport. That wouldn't matter, right? All of the airplanes taking off, and that wouldn't contribute to the temperature rising, would it? No, because it's a beehive on stilts. It's absolutely foolproof. And there's great graphs here, and yeah, you just want to see all these graphs. They're so good. It's so good to see this narrative destroyed professionally by scientists, by writing a report commissioned from the government in the United States. We love to see it so much. And also covers sea level rise. And if you haven't seen the Instagram recently or the social media where I destroyed the sea level rise agenda with a series of memes that went viral all over social media. On my Instagram, on the ClimateCon Instagram, we got tens of millions of views on these memes, and then loads of other influencers picked it up and shared it around. Most people kept the watermark, but a couple, unfortunately, for some reason, wanted to just take the meme without keeping the watermark. I mean, nothing wrong with sharing the memes, but just keep the watermark, man. I mean, come on. It's just a tiny little thing. Whatever. Anyway, this report destroys the sea level rise, and how it's literally what I was showing in these photos is that it's so small you can barely see it. You can't see it. It's literally... That's quite funny. What people would come back to on the social media is like, what about the tides? And it's like, imagine a sea level rise so insignificant, but the rising of the tides, you can't see it. It's like, hey, hang on a minute. Maybe it's just not something to worry about ever. So there's another agenda destroyed. And it goes on again to come back to CO2, saying that more CO2 is more food. and giving the positive economic benefits of extra CO2 and showing the levels of yields from the different crops like corn and wheat and so on. And dismantles another core part of the propaganda, which is that heat is the bigger killer than cold, when obviously the truth is cold is by far the bigger killer, not heat. And it's like, someone somewhere in the climate cult must just not like hot weather, and they're like, we must not have it any warmer ever, because that would be the end of everything. And it's like, man, coming from the cloud and darky and gloomy UK, when I heard global warming, I was like, yes, please, give me a bit of that. Why not have this place 2 degrees warmer all of the time? It would be amazing. Winters would suck a lot less. We'd actually have a decent summer. And what actually happens is when the temperature increases, it doesn't affect the whole planet the same. It's actually the colder places that get warmer, and that balances out the temperature, and that results in less extreme weather, which I do believe this report covers as well, and I've also covered on the website. But it's like, if it was slightly warmer, less people would be dying from the cold. Sure, some more might die from the heat, but it's overwhelmingly people dying from cold anyway, like by a magnitude of nearly 10. So we can balance that out. And if it was slightly warmer, a lot less people would die from cold, and maybe a small amount more would die from heat. Yeah, amazing. We love to see it. Alright, so that's just the overview of the report. Go to the website to read the full thing. And there's a few more things to cover here, because if you're not always online and paying attention to everything, it can be hard to keep up. I understand there's stuff happening every single day, and I do my best to keep up, and I post the most important stuff with my own overview, and I guess that's why you're here. Right, Texas has taken BlackRock to court over coal market manipulation. Now, this was first initiated in 2024, but it's going to the next stage, because initially BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, which is this investment cartel, they filed for a dismissal of the case, and they lost that very recently, the past week. So that is a really amazing thing to see. It's going to be going ahead. It will be very interesting to see what happens from this. And already, because of this pressure from Texas and 11 other United States, Republican-led states, because of this pressure already, they're already starting to backtrack away from the climate cult narrative. So the pressure is already being put onto these investment cartels, and they're having to respond, which is amazing. We love to see it. And just to give you a quick overview, these Republican-led states are suing BlackRock, Vanguard and State Street, alleging they conspired to suppress coal production, driving up energy costs. The lawsuit claims these asset managers, controlling over 27 trillion United States dollars, used their stakes in coal companies to push environmental, social governance goals, reducing output and harming consumers. The case says that this investment cartel violates antitrust laws, and we're going to see how this all plays out. The legal battle highlights tensions between climate agendas and energy affordability, questioning whether financial giants are prioritizing ideology over market freedom. Well, fucking yes, they are. Anyone with 2 eyes and a brain cell can see that happening. And whilst that's happening over in the United States, something else that was initiated over there and now is sweeping around the world, especially here in the UK, is the major banks leaving net zero. And so far we've had like Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. They have already exited the net zero banking alliance. And also what's then happened is banks like Barclays and HSBC are also leaving this alliance now, and one by one the dominoes are falling. Critics are arguing that these alliances force banks to prioritise green policies over economic realities, potentially strangling energy markets and everything, I would say. And this departure signals a shift towards, I guess, reality. For so long, the climate cult's been pulling the wool over everybody's eyes with climate lies, and now they're all falling apart. And it's wonderful to see. We just got to keep going, guys. Keep pushing, keep fighting, because we can win this, but we need to keep going. We haven't won yet. New Zealand is also opening up new hydrocarbon exploration, and this is great to see, because New Zealand has lifted its ban on oil and gas exploration, reversing a policy from the Ardern era to bolster energy security and economic growth. This move that just happened is aligning with global trends, which is favouring hydrocarbon development and rising energy demands. Outside of our little bubble in the UK and a bit of the European Union, most of the world is still like wanting more and more and more of hydrocarbons. So we're not leading the way. Like it's like Ed Miliband was questioned once about why are we doing this, man? Like literally, our contribution to the atmosphere is insignificant. It makes no sense. And it's like, well, if we do it, we'll lead other people, and so other countries will do it. And it's like, bro, that's not happening at all. In fact, countries like China are exploding in their hydrocarbon use, building 2 new coal plants every week, whilst they also, curiously and conveniently for them, I suppose, completely corner the market on this renewable scam. Nearly all of the wind turbines and solar panels are made in China. What a surprise that this benefits them massively and seems to hurt us massively. It's a big scam. The UK and the EU are being taken to the cleaners, and we need to wake up quick time to sort this out so that we don't destroy ourselves in some insane virtue madness. Alright, so yeah, just to finish with, guys, if you haven't seen yet, I do have a new book coming out, which is the Advanced Guide to the Climate Con that I did mention before, which just builds upon everything the first book had. And if you are a member, you will get an ebook version of that for free as a thank you. You get all the books I create for free in ebook form. You get the course, the Climate Con Mastery, and all of the other courses that I'm going to create in the future for free, and extra exclusive premium content like part 2 of this podcast, which is coming right up. As well as exclusive articles, the first release of new content, some new content, and so on. I do give a lot to the membership because I'm so grateful for you guys for supporting our fight. We couldn't do it without you, and we've been growing quite nicely this year, which is really awesome to see. You guys are joining me in this battle, and it's working. We are seeing the fruits of our labour pay off, so it's an amazing thing. And this book is, I think it's going to be amazing for the people who read it. I think you're really going to love it. I've done, I think, a pretty damn good job of bringing the complex to as simple as it can, whilst also being comprehensive and making sure we haven't missed anything. And so it's still easy to read and easy to understand, but it doesn't leave any stone uncovered, unturned. It goes in deep and hard, and we explore everything we need to explore about this great con. And I think my favourite chapter actually is going to be the one that I'm going to do the book reading for in part 2, and that is all about the history of everything, of how we got here. It was really cool to do the research to explore this chapter, to be able to write about it comprehensively, and to see how do we get to where we are now, who's actually in control of this, who's benefiting from all of this, understanding the psychology and how it's changed and how the tactics that our enemies use to manipulate us. I just find all this stuff fascinating. I am a student of psychology. I find it so interesting, and that was a really interesting chapter to write. Then second to this had to be the Hello Hydrocarbon chapter, which is a brand new chapter that wasn't in the first book, where we look at hydrocarbons extensively and then answer the big question on, are they renewable? And if so, how important is that to everything? So all of that's coming up in the next book. Go to thegreatclimatecon.com. Take a look, get a pre-order in. And if you haven't already, join the membership. It's only £2.99 per month for the recruit tier. All of the tiers get all of the same benefits, but there are different levels depending on how much you want to contribute. But it's £2.99 a month. And you get access to all of this wonderful content. Alright guys, that wraps up episode 12 of the ClimateCon podcast. I am so grateful to have you here. Together, we will defeat the ClimateCon.